Picture this. I'm standing at the edge of a world that feels like it's holding its breath, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears until you swear you can hear your own heartbeat. My name's Vanessa, I'm 27, and I've spent the last 3 years tethered to a man who could convince the sun itself to rise just for him. Ethan, my husband, is 30, all rugged edges and untamed energy, with a chiseled jaw that could cut glass and a grin so infectious it's practically a weapon. He's the kind of person who doesn't just live for the thrill, he chases it down, wrestles it into submission, whether he's scaling sheer cliffs with nothing but a rope and sheer stubbornness, or plunging into rivers so cold they'd steal your breath. Me? I'm the opposite. A city girl through and through, I find my peace in the hum of a quiet coffee shop, the glow of a lamp on a rainy night, the comfort of a book and a blanket. But for Ethan, I've always tagged along, my sneakers reluctantly trading pavement for dirt trails, my heart racing not just from fear, but from the sheer force of his excitement pulling me forward. Our dynamic is a dance I've learned by heart. He pushes boundaries like they're made of paper, always daring the world to stop him, while I trail behind, my laughter tinged with nerves, my hands clenched just a little too tight. I've jumped off ledges because he swore the view was worth it, waded through icy streams because his eyes lit up at the challenge. Every time, I tell myself it's to keep him happy. But deep down, I know it's more than that. There's something about seeing the world through his fearless lens that keeps me coming back, even when my instincts scream to stay put. And now, here we are, on the brink of his latest wild idea, a nighttime quest in a dense, sprawling forest hugging the edge of a national park. No GPS, no tech, just us and the raw, untamed heart of nature. Ethan signed us up without a second thought, his voice buzzing with anticipation as he described navigating by starlight, relying on nothing but instinct and grit. I remember packing our gear, my stomach twisting into knots as I stuffed a flashlight into my backpack, double-checking the batteries like my life depended on it. Ethan was practically vibrating with energy, tossing in supplies with the casual confidence of someone who's never met a challenge he couldn't charm into submission. I tried to match his enthusiasm, but doubt gnawed at me, a quiet whisper asking if we were biting off more than we could chew. Still, his excitement was a tidal wave, and I let it sweep me up, even as my fingers fumbled with the straps of my pack. We're not alone on this adventure, though. There's Blake, our instructor for this trip, a towering figure in his mid-30s, broad-shouldered and steady as the ancient trees around us. He's got this quiet intensity about him, like he's seen every corner of the wilderness and come out the other side with stories he'll never tell. As we step into the forest, the night wraps around us like a heavy cloak, and I can feel the weight of it pressing down. There are 8 of us in total, a ragtag crew of adventurers, each with our own reasons for being here, but all drawn together by the promise of something extraordinary. Ethan's right up front, of course, his boots crunching confidently over the uneven ground, while I'm somewhere in the middle, trying to keep pace as the undergrowth snags at my legs. Blake leads the way, his headlamp casting a narrow beam through the endless black, illuminating gnarled roots and glistening leaves slick with dew. The forest is alive, a symphony of sounds that set my nerves on edge. Owls hoot in the distance, their calls echoing through the canopy like ghostly whispers. Twigs snap underfoot with every step, the sharp cracks making me flinch as if something or someone is following just out of sight. The chilly breeze rustles the leaves above, sending a shiver down my spine that has nothing to do with the cold. I can smell the damp earth, rich and loamy, mixing with the faint tang of pine, and it's so different from the sterile air of the city that it almost feels like I'm breathing for the first time. My backpack pulls at my shoulders, heavier than I expected, each strap digging into my skin as I adjust my grip on the straps for the 100th time. Our headlamps slice through the darkness, but they only reveal slivers of the world around us. Everything else is swallowed by shadow, and I can't shake the feeling that we're intruding on something ancient, something that doesn't want us here. Ethan's voice cuts through the tension like a blade, bright and brash, as he cracks a joke about us being lost before we've even started. A few of the others chuckle, their laughter bouncing off the trees, but I just roll my eyes, even though he can't see it. "Come on, Vanessa, pick up the pace," he calls over his shoulder, his tone teasing, but with that undercurrent of impatience I know so well. I mutter under my breath about how I'd like to see him carry my pack for a mile, my words lost in the rustle of the wind. My boots slip on a patch of wet moss, and I nearly go down, my heart lurching as I flail for balance. Before I can hit the ground, a strong hand grips my arm, steadying me. It's Blake, his presence a quiet anchor in the chaos of the night. "Careful there," he says, his voice low and calm as he helps me over a fallen log, his grip firm and reassuring. I mumble a thanks, my cheeks burning even though I know he can't see them in the dark. For a moment, I notice how different he is from Ethan. Where my husband is all fire and reckless abandon, Blake feels like solid ground, a steady force that doesn't demand anything from me, but somehow makes me feel seen. I shake the thought away as quickly as it comes, focusing on the path ahead. But there's a lingering warmth in my chest I can't quite ignore. We keep moving, the group strung out along the narrow trail, our breaths puffing out in little clouds of mist in the chilly night air. The distant rumble of thunder I'd barely noticed earlier starts to grow louder, more insistent, like a warning drum roll echoing through the trees. I glance up at the canopy, but the sky is hidden, swallowed by layers of dark leaves. My stomach tightens, a flicker of unease creeping in, but I push it down, telling myself it's just my city nerves acting up again. Then, without warning, the heavens split open. The rain comes down in a sudden, vicious torrent, like someone flipped a switch and unleashed a wall of water on us. It's not a gentle drizzle. It's a full-on assault, pelting my skin like tiny bullets, stinging my face and hands as it soaks through my jacket in seconds. I'm drenched to the bone, the cold seeping into every inch of me, making my fingers stiff and clumsy. The wind howls through the forest, a feral scream that drowns out everything else, whipping branches into a frenzy as visibility drops to almost nothing. I can barely see 2 feet in front of me, the beam of my headlamp swallowed by the swirling gray curtain of rain. Panic claws at my chest as I stumble forward, my boots slipping on the now muddy ground, each step a battle against the storm's fury. Shouts erupt around me, voices overlapping in a chaotic mess, but I can't make out the words over the roar of the downpour. Blake's voice cuts through the noise, sharp and commanding, barking for us to split into smaller groups and find shelter. My heart races as I turn, searching for Ethan, needing to see his familiar silhouette through the chaos. But he's gone, swallowed by the storm and the scattering crowd. "Ethan!" I scream, my voice raw and hoarse, tearing from my throat as I spin in every direction, rain streaming into my eyes, blurring what little I can see. My chest tightens, a suffocating weight pressing down as I call his name again and again, each shout more desperate than the last. The wind steals my words, flinging them into the void, and I'm left with nothing but the pounding of my own heartbeat and the relentless drum of rain against my skin. Suddenly, a hand grabs mine, strong and unyielding, yanking me out of my spiraling panic. I gasp, nearly pulling away, until I realize it's Blake. His face is barely visible through the sheets of rain, but his grip is a lifeline, pulling me forward with a force that leaves no room for hesitation. "This way!" he yells, his voice barely audible over the storm, but I cling to it like it's the only thing keeping me grounded. We stumble through the deluge, branches clawing at my face and arms, snagging my clothes as if the forest itself is trying to drag me back. My legs burn with the effort of keeping up, mud sucking at my boots with every step. But Blake doesn't let go, his hand a steady anchor in the chaos. I don't know how long we run. Seconds? Minutes? It all blurs together. Until finally, through the haze, I spot a small, weathered wooden cabin nestled in a clearing, its outline jagged and uneven against the storm. We burst through the door, the wind slamming it shut behind us with a deafening bang. Inside, the air is musty and cold, thick with the smell of damp wood and decay. A single lantern flickers on a rickety table in the center of the room, casting long, wavering shadows across the walls. I'm shivering uncontrollably, my teeth chattering so hard I can barely speak, my soaked clothes clinging to me like a second skin. I collapse into a corner, huddling against the rough wall as I try to wring out my jacket, my numb fingers fumbling with the sodden fabric. My breath comes in short, ragged gasps, the cold air biting at my lungs as I try to steady myself. Blake moves around the cabin with a quiet efficiency, checking the corners, dragging an old, tattered blanket from a shelf and tossing it over to me without a word. I wrap it around my shoulders, the coarse material scratching against my skin, but it's something, a thin barrier against the chill that's settled deep into my bones. The silence between us is thick, heavy with unspoken words, and I can't bring myself to meet his eyes. Instead, I focus on the flickering lantern, the way the light dances across the warped wooden floor, trying to anchor myself to something, anything, that isn't the storm of emotions raging inside me. My mind is a mess, a tangled knot of guilt and confusion that I can't begin to unravel. What happened earlier, in the heat of the moment, when the storm had us both cornered and vulnerable, it's like a brand seared into my memory. I can still feel the ghost of Blake's lips on mine, the desperate, fleeting kiss that shouldn't have happened, that I shouldn't have let happen. It was a mistake, born out of fear and adrenaline, but that doesn't stop the guilt from clawing at my chest. Sharp and unrelenting, Ethan's face flashes in my mind, his bright, trusting grin, the way he always looks at me like I'm his whole world. How could I betray that? But even as the shame burns through me, there's this other thing, this confusing thrill that I can't shake. A spark that lingers in the pit of my stomach and makes my heart race for all the wrong reasons. I hate myself for it, for feeling anything other than regret. But it's there, undeniable, and it terrifies me. Blake and I work in silence to tidy up the cabin, sweeping away cobwebs and pushing debris into a corner, anything to keep our hands busy and avoid the weight of what's hanging between us. I steal glances at him when I think he's not looking, watching the way his jaw tightens, the way his hands move with a deliberate slowness, like he's holding himself back from saying something. Or maybe I'm just projecting, seeing what I want to see because I'm too scared to face my own thoughts. The air feels charged, like the storm outside has seeped into this tiny, crumbling space, crackling with tension that neither of us knows how to break. I want to say something, to apologize or explain, but every time I open my mouth, the words die in my throat, choked by the fear of what they might reveal. The rain outside eases slightly, no longer a deafening roar but a steady patter against the roof, a reminder that the world hasn't stopped, even if it feels like mine has. Through the cracked window, I hear voices, faint at first, then louder, cutting through the drizzle. My stomach twists as I recognize Ethan's voice, calling my name with that familiar mix of relief and urgency. It's like a punch to the gut, hearing him out there, knowing I have to face him with this secret burning a hole through me. I force a smile, the kind that feels like it's carved into my face with a dull knife, and glance at Blake one last time. His expression is unreadable, a mask of stoicism as he nods toward the door, silently telling me it's time to go. I nod back, swallowing hard, and step outside into the damp, gray light. The group is reuniting just beyond the clearing, their figures blurred by the lingering mist, but growing clearer as we approach. Ethan spots me first, his face breaking into a wide, relieved grin as he rushes over, completely soaked but seemingly unbothered by it. Before I can brace myself, he pulls me into a tight hug, his arms strong and familiar around me, the scent of rain and earth clinging to his jacket. I flinch at the contact, a visceral reaction I can't control, overwhelmed by the shame that surges up like bile in my throat. But he doesn't notice, doesn't feel the way my body tenses under his touch. He's too busy ecking me over, his hands brushing wet strands of hair from my face, his voice a mix of worry and relief as he asks if I'm okay. I nod, barely able to meet his eyes, my throat tight with the weight of everything I'm holding back. The rest of the group trickles in, weary and drenched, their faces etched with exhaustion, but also a quiet triumph for having made it through the storm. We make our way back to base camp, a small clearing where a fire pit sits surrounded by weathered logs, a beacon of normalcy after the chaos we've endured. The air is still damp, heavy with the scent of wet pine, but the rain has tapered off to a faint drizzle, and the sky above is starting to clear, revealing slivers of starlight through the thinning clouds. We huddle around the fire, the crackling flames casting a warm, flickering glow over our tired faces. I sit close to Ethan, craving the comfort of his presence, even as guilt gnaws at my insides. The heat of the fire is a small mercy, seeping into my chilled bones, though it does little to ease the storm still raging in my mind. Everyone's quiet at first, too drained to speak, passing around a thermos of hot coffee someone had the foresight to pack. The bitter warmth of it burns my tongue, but I welcome the distraction, clutching the metal cup like it's a lifeline. Ethan's arm rests casually around my shoulders, his thumb tracing absent circles on my jacket, and I try to focus on that small, familiar gesture instead of the secret that's clawing at me from the inside out. Then Ethan pulls out his laptop, a rugged thing built for the outdoors, and announces he's got the drone footage from earlier in the trip loaded up. My stomach drops like a stone. I'd forgotten about the drone, the little device he'd been so excited to test out, capturing our trek through the forest before the storm hit. The group perks up, eager for a distraction, scooting closer as he sets the laptop on a flat rock in front of the fire, the screen glowing unnaturally bright against the dark. My hands clench in my lap, fingers digging into my palms so hard I'm sure I'll leave marks. I don't want to watch this. I don't want to relive any part of this night, not when every memory is tainted by what I did. But I can't look away, can't draw attention to myself by refusing. So I sit there, frozen, as the video starts to play. At first it's harmless, stunning even. The drone's perspective soars above us, showing our little group trekking through the dense forest, tiny figures against the vast, untamed wilderness. The footage captures the way the trees seem to close in around us, their branches like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. Ethan's voice narrates over the crackle of the fire, pointing out landmarks with that boyish excitement I usually find so endearing. The others murmur in appreciation, marveling at the bird's-eye view of our journey. But my heart is pounding, a drumbeat of dread that grows louder with every passing second. I know what's coming, even if I don't want to admit it to myself. My eyes are glued to the screen, my breath shallow, as the footage shifts to the moment the storm rolled in. The video gets grainy as the drone struggles against the wind and rain, the image shaking and blurring, but it's still clear enough to see the chaos unfold. Us scattering, the forest turning into a swirling mess of gray and green. Then the drone hovers near that damned cabin, the one Blake and I stumbled into, and my chest tightens so hard I can barely breathe. The camera dips low, catching the outline of the weathered structure through the downpour, and then, there it is. Through a cracked, grimy window, the lens captures a fleeting but unmistakable moment. Blake and me pressed close, our faces tilted toward each other. The kiss raw and undeniable even in the dim, flickering light of that lantern. It's only a second, maybe two, but it feels like an eternity stretched out on that screen for everyone to see. The group falls silent, a heavy, suffocating quiet that presses down on me harder than the storm ever did. I can feel every pair of eyes shift, not directly at me, but in that subtle, unspoken way that tells me they saw it too. My face burns, a scalding heat that creeps up my neck and into my cheeks. and I'm suddenly hyper-aware of Ethan's arm still draped around me, his thumb frozen mid-circle. I don't dare look at him, can't bear to see the confusion or hurt or anger that must be there. Instead, I stare at the laptop screen, now mercifully black as the footage ends, the glow reflecting nothing but my own distorted, guilty expression. The crackle of the fire is the only sound for a long, agonizing moment, until someone coughs awkwardly and another mutters something about the storm being wild. They're trying to move past it, to spare me, or maybe themselves, the discomfort. But it doesn't erase what's been seen. Ethan's arm slips away from my shoulder, slow and deliberate, and my stomach churns as I feel the space between us grow, not just physically, but in a way I can't quite name. He doesn't say anything, not yet, and that silence is worse than any accusation. I want to explain, to blurt out that it was a mistake, a split-second lapse in judgment fueled by fear and adrenaline, but my throat is locked tight, my words trapped behind a wall of shame. The group starts to disperse, mumbling about turning in for the night, their voices a low hum as they shuffle toward their tents. I stay rooted to the log, unable to move, until Ethan finally stands, his shadow looming over me for a heartbeat before he mutters, "Let's get some rest." His tone is flat, unreadable, and it cuts deeper than any shout could have. We make our way to our tent in silence, the damp ground squelching under our boots, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and pine. Inside, the small space feels claustrophobic, the canvas walls pressing in as we settle onto our sleeping bags. The faint glow of a lantern casts soft, wavering light across Ethan's face, and I can see the tension in his jaw, the way his eyes avoid mine as he busies himself with unzipping his jacket. I sit cross-legged, my hands fidgeting in my lap, the weight of what I need to say crushing me. I can't let this fester, can't let the unspoken truth poison us any more than it already has. So I take a shaky breath, my voice barely above a whisper as I start, "Ethan, I need to tell you something." He looks at me then, his gaze sharp and piercing, and I almost lose my nerve. But I push on, the words spilling out in a rush, raw and unfiltered. I tell him everything, how the storm separated us, how Blake and I ended up in that cabin, how fear and exhaustion blurred the lines until I made a choice I regret with every fiber of my being. I confess to the kiss, to the fleeting moment of weakness, my voice cracking as I admit how sorry I am, how I'd do anything to take it back. I brace myself for his reaction, expecting anger, hurt, maybe even disgust. I'm ready for him to walk out of this tent, to leave me with the wreckage of my mistake. But Ethan doesn't react the way I expect. He sits there, his expression unreadable at first, his hands still as he processes my words. Then, slowly, a strange look crosses his face. Not anger, not betrayal, but something else, something I can't quite place. His lips quirk into a half smile, almost mischievous, and when he speaks, his voice is low, almost conspiratorial. "You know, Vanessa, I've always wondered what it'd be like to push boundaries, not just out here in the wild, but between us." My breath catches, my mind reeling as I try to make sense of what he's saying. He leans closer, his eyes glinting with a mix of curiosity and something darker, more daring. "I've fantasized about something like this, about exploring new territory together, where the boundaries blur and we discover what lies beyond the familiar. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment if you enjoyed this story. This will help us create more engaging stories for you.